On this episode of Game Shack, AtGames has just announced that the lag is going to be fixed on all of the Zen games starting in September, but I'm going to give AtGames 7 more things that they can do to make the 4KP even better than it already is. All that and more coming up next. Hey everybody, welcome on back into the Game Shack. I am your host, JDV. Thanks for stopping on by. It really does mean a lot to us. If you can give me a thumbs up, it really does help the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell if you had. Okay, so that's right. The big news of the weekend was that AtGames has announced that starting on September 12th, starting with the ADDAMS family pin, the lag will be removed. Apparently, they rebuilt the code from the ground up, at least according to this little comic book graphic. So that should be fantastic news for everybody involved, for AtGames, for people who are already into the ecosystem, and for people who are wanting to jump into this but reluctant because of the lag. Now, as almost anybody knows who watches this channel, I've been a giant fan of this table since it was released. For the money, there's simply nothing else like it on the market. It offers you the chance to play over 100 different 4K-ish games on a really, really beautiful looking machine that has really good hardware, solenoids, topper, and all that. Of course, you can now get into a lower tier version of the same thing, I think for $1,200 delivered to your door if you're willing to wait a month. So that is an incredible deal. And then you can add the topper and SSF kit and OTG and other things down the line should you want to. But it was really that lag that kept a lot of people from jumping in at any price. This thing could have been $500 and some people still wouldn't have bought it because of the lag issue. It's something that I totally understood and have mentioned in every video that I review, even though I do love this machine. Now, I've been thinking about a video of other things I would like to see fixed on this, but until the lag got dealt with, I felt like, well, until you get the lag fixed, I know you're not going to do these other things, so I thought I'd kind of sit on it. And so now that the lag does appear to be fixed, or going to be fixed, here are 7 things that AtGames can do to make this 4KP even better. And the number 7 thing is the high scores. Now, if you go onto the high scores right now, they'll give you the top 50 in the world, but there are a lot of really, really good players regardless of lag, and you're going to see some monstrously high scores on just about all of these games, in part because some of these games are quite old. Like if you are great at Attack from Mars in the real world, you're probably going to be pretty good at it on the 4KP. So you see a whole bunch of high scores, which is all to the good, except unless you're not in the top 50 in the world, and that way you cannot see your high scores. I would like to see them develop the high score system where, sort of like you can on the A1UP system, where you see everybody's score if you keep scrolling. So you can see the 5,000th person's high score in the world. So that'd be just a kind of a cool thing to add. Shouldn't be too hard to do. I think they did do it before on the HDL, a similar kind of system, so it should be possible, and hopefully we'll see that, you know, sometime around Christmas. Number 6 thing I'd like to see, and it is sort of related to the high scores in as much as it should be possible to do relatively easy, and that is give us the ability to set up tournaments like you can in Steam. One of the cool things about Steam is that you can set up a tournament, and whoever has the code to that room can go in there and play in the tournament. I play a lot in the Arcade Talk tournaments. They run a great tournament, and I love going to those things and just kind of throwing down the gauntlet and seeing who the world's best are. I've done pretty good in them, so maybe that's why I like it. But for sure, I'd like to be able to see the high scores, and for sure, I'd like to be able to play in tournaments on this machine. Coming in at number 5 on my list of things that I hope that AtGames gives us down the line is light up buttons on the front of the machine. Now, right now, the coin doors will light up, which is slick, but the buttons, which you're going to use constantly for this game, do not light up. Now, after a while, you do develop muscle memory, and you're going to be clicking the right button anyway, thanks in part to the improved user interface on this game. I hope that they offer maybe like a little kit that we can install onto this for pre-existing users, and it's something that they throw in for future releases down the line. Anyway, I would really like to see those front buttons light up. I just think it would look super cool. Speaking of looking super cool, the thing that comes on to number 4 on my list is, and this is probably the longest shot of all, because A, it's another thing of hardware, and B, I don't know that they really understand how kind of important it is, but I would love to have a strobe light be able to put right there in the middle there. And that would do a lot, because there's a lot of games, particularly these Zen games, that are based in real world pins, where if you hit a super jackpot or get into a certain wizard mode, a strobe light will go off. Now, I've already done a video on how to kind of add your own strobe light, which does work very, very well, actually. However, it'd be really cool to have actually kind of triggered events happen the way that they absolutely do in the real world, on a strobe light here, or maybe some flashers in the back. Just give us maybe a kit that, again, we can install and just clip onto the front of the machine, or wherever, I guess, to give us a strobe light, because that strobe light effect is actually amazingly effective considering how cheap and low tech it really is at this point to do. Just something that I would like to see as an add-on kit down the line. All right, now we're into the top 3 things that I hope to be fixed, and all of the things I mentioned, these are the most important things, and I do hope that we do see this. And number 3 is I hope to see graphic improvements to some of the games. Most of the games look pretty fantastic. Like, I'm borderline still shocked at how good Godzilla and that game pack looks for this machine. I mean, those games look really, really good. I mean, just as good as they look on my 43-inch $1,000 OLED machine that I have running in my DIY version. However, some of the games don't, and really the one that bugs me the most is Star Trek The Next Generation. One, because otherwise they really brilliantly incorporate all the things that Steam gets right in that game. It's actually kind of a hard game to emulate. But if you zoom in onto the wireforms and other elements on the playfield, like the flippers, you're going to see a wild amount of jagginess there, and it really does kind of hurt the game, especially when you think about how good a game like Godzilla is, and that is a very complicated modern type game with lots of callouts, lots of sound effects, lots of lighting, lots of kind of things going on in the playfield. So you'd think that we'd be able to see some better looking graphics on Star Trek, but there's a couple of Gottlieb games that I think need a little polishing as well. So I really hope that they can go back and throw on some anti-aliasing or do whatever other kind of Zen magic they need to do to make some of the graphics look better on these machines. It is a 4K screen. I don't necessarily expect the games to be 4K, mind you, but I do want them to look better than they do. And on some of those playfields, Star Trek in particular, it's looking like a 480, 720. I mean, it's just not there. So I hope that they do go back and tweak some of the games that need it. Other games, again, like Twilight Zone, Attack from Mars, Godzilla, really don't need anything, but some of them do. The number 2 thing on my list, what I really hope and kind of need them to improve for me to just absolutely be over the hill in love with this thing, is the ability to control the sound better. And the main way it could be better is just give us more control over where the sound is. Now, on a system like VPX, you can actually tell left or right, front or back, any one of the speakers. You can really kind of dial in where the ball rolling kind of starts and stops, where the knocker is going to be at, where the bumpers are going to be at. And that's actually one of my biggest critiques so far, is that a lot of the times in these games you'll hear the bumper sound, which sounds good and everything, but you're going to be hearing it from the front of the machine. And of course, most bumpers are going to be at the top of the playfield, so which is kind of weird. The other thing that I think that they really should do, hopefully down the line, is give, and this is something that VPX and Future Pinball don't do that I do think they should do, which is give us the ability to equalize the sound. It doesn't have to be a lot, just bass, middle, and treble. Give us the ability to maybe pull back the bass on maybe the thumper or something like that. Maybe add bass to the back speakers again if you're running the bumper sounds up there. Maybe add some treble, say, to the ball rolling down the wireforms. It'd just be nice to be able to have not only control over where the sounds are, but the ability to tweak how those sounds sound. And the number 1 most important thing that I hope AtGames give us down the line is the ability to either change the perspective of the table, so the angle of the tables, and or an apron mode. An apron mode is just essentially zooming into the table to cut off the top and bottom, so you're really only seeing the playfield. You don't see the apron card, which is what they call it, apron mode, or the top of the game. And this is really super important for Zen games, because I don't know what it is about Zen design games, but almost all of them have a huge amount of dead space just built into their games. Some of them, you'll have almost half of the playfield will be dead space, or space that very rarely sees action in terms of what you're playing on the pinball playfield, and that can be a real bummer. Now, in the Steam versions, they usually give you 6 or 7 points of view. That kind of usually lets you zoom in somehow and change the perspective too. Do you have anything that Zen realistically can do on this model of game that's not going to break the bank and or destroy the programming? I mean, I'm not expecting 3D ability or some of that kind of stuff, or tracking your eye, or some of the stuff that you can really do in high-end pinball, but it would be nice to do at least some of the stuff that I'm suggesting. But let me know down below if you have any suggestions for AtGames, what they can do to make this already great machine even better. All right, so that's going to wrap up this episode. Give me a thumbs up on the way out the door. It really does help the channel. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the notification bell. Let your friends know. Love each other. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the Game Shack. Mwah!
Be sure to visit EvilGeniusEntertainment.com for exclusive content, swag, casting call news, and much, much more.